So we are on to X-Files episode 17 of season 1, which is EBE. And yet another one that I remember absolutely nothing about going into, Brian. Which sometimes I feel is a bit of a blessing with some of these episodes.
Yeah.
But this one opens up with a pilot travelling over the skies of Iraq, and he sees a UFO. He reports it, and then more appear, and then he attacks one, and it crashes into a typical Iraqi forest, which I thought was quite interesting.
That looks rather like a forest from Vancouver.
It does. Didn't know Iraq had them, but there you go.
Yeah.
And then we find out that it's a downed ship, and there is a light in the sky. So what did you think of this opening scene?
Yeah, this one kind of gave me flashbacks somewhat to the episode Fallen Angel. And I always remember when the series first came out on video and whatnot, and I used to watch it all the time. I always used to get these two episodes mixed up. I'd be watching one and I'd be thinking, this is the Fallen Angel, and then I'd be like, oh no, this is EBE. And I'd the same thing with when I'm watching Fallen Angel. I could never tell the two apart because they both have a similar opening with these aircraft that get downed, and it turns out to be like an alien, and it's just so very similar, but.
Yeah, I kind of liked the opening here because it was like something different. It was an Iraqi pilot and several aliens again, and then it crashes, and you're like, wow, they're going to take the X-Files to like Iraq. I can't believe it. And then it just kind of changes. But I really liked the kind of opening. It had my interest, which most of the good episodes tend to pique my interest very early on. So after that, we get the titles and the theme music, and then we move into Tennessee, where a trucker is driving down the road, and then the radio starts to like flicker and distort and become all crazy, and then there's a light in the sky, and then a police car races by. There's things on the radio about lights in the sky, and something happens to the truck.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, when I was first watching this, obviously, like, as you get further into the episode, there's a reason for it. You understand why. But when you're seeing this guy for the first time, he looks like the most trigger-happy person ever. He just looks like he's itching to blow someone away. His hand is on that gun.
He jumps out. There's been a light in the sky. And the first thing he does is grab a shotgun and jump out the car, and he's just pure like, oh. And he goes to the back of the truck, and the truck's open. And he starts shooting the boxes for some reason. And again, you're like, what's going on here? And then you see the alien ship in the sky. It's quite apparent. They don't try to hide it or make you feel... usually they do like a light to sort of pretend it's going to be... It could be anything. Could be motorcycles coming out of a forest.
There's a definite ship there, isn't there? There's no mistaking that it's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And then you have it jumps to Mulder with these two sets of stopwatches that will come into play later on again. Yeah,
and this is something that is a pickup from previous episodes. I mean, we had this in the
pilot, isn't it?
Yeah, had this in the first episode with these stopwatches, with the loss of time. I think it was 9 minutes or something like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, nice to see that make a reappearance.
Yeah, definitely. So Mulder starts his stopwatches, and then you just have Scully, Captain Reason, coming in again with, lightning, storm...
Swamp gas.
Swamp gas. I love it. I mean, you feel this is stretching a little bit, but, it's still kind of...
I love Mulder's response when he says, that happens to me every time I eat Dodger dogs.
And then Mulder just starts to rhyme off that he's never seen so much information about a UFO sort of sighting in his life. He's usually dotted to one or two, but there's so many sightings or other phenomena that points to UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
And then Scully says it's not conclusive. And then Mulder asks the question, why was the truck driver singled out?
Yeah.
And even then I wasn't like, was he singled out? I don't know. It wasn't as apparent to me, but it's got a good point. It really drags the mystery right into the forefront of this. And then Mulder stops the stopwatches, and they're at two different times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got that instantly. You're like, oh, there's something good afoot here. It better have the finish to this that I'm hoping for. It's a good mystery, and I like how it's building up so far.
I do have to say, though, with all the different ways in which Scully broke down Mulder's arguments, I'm surprised that at the end of all this, she doesn't say, "Are you sure one of those stopwatches isn't broken?"
Yeah, and it's just the way he's testing the time by like pressing them both at the same time, or so he thinks. I mean, what if he presses one a little second or two late, and then he's something going like, "Oh my god!" Like,
You're not talking milliseconds of time difference, though, are you? It's like you're talking minutes from the stopwatches.
was it? I took it as seconds.
No, it's the big hand is definitely in opposite directions. Put it that way. So it's very noticeable.
Yes. Okay. So we go to the police station where the trucker is giving a statement to Mulder and Scully about the green and orange lights. And he starts to cough and just generally looks unwell. And in which case we're all thinking, or I'm thinking anyway, space flu. It's definitely space flu. There's something seriously wrong with this guy.
Well, he did say it looked like a giant cigar, apparently, in his first testimony.
Yeah.
So maybe it's some kind of alien smoker's cough, smoker's cancer, or something.
And you can almost see Mulder kind of raise an eyebrow as if to go, oh yeah, right, okay. And Scully straight in with Gulf War syndrome. You know,
It's very it's a very kind of defining trait of Mulder in general, but something that this episode is particularly touching on is this this pattern of Mulder to rush headlong into believing people and anything they say because he wants to believe, and how that can be exploited. I mean, that's essentially what this episode is about.
Definitely. So, I mean, they're talking to the trucker, and Scully's saying it's the Gulf War. He says he's never been to the Gulf War, so he can't have Gulf War syndrome. And they ask the question, when have you started to show these symptoms? And the trucker kind of says, since the encounter. Like, you know, and when we find out about the trucker later on, it seemed kind of strange that he would give that answer.
Well...
Or does it?
No, well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because this whole episode is built, I guess, on the idea that nothing in it can be taken at face value. Everything is a misdirection or a redirection for the sake of Mulder. So even everything this guy is saying right now, it's all lies. But who are the lies for? And I think that for Mulder, you know, that I think this guy, everything he's saying right now, it's all set up to get Mulder onto a particular course.
Yes, but then we do have the fact that it also shows you the alien at the start as well, you know, the alien ship. You know, whereas most times it just shows you, like, it actually says, no, this is definitive, this is about aliens, there is an alien ship here. And then it starts to layer in the lies in amongst it and just weave a web of, you're never quite sure what's true and what's not. But this scene
you also don't know what the trucker knows either.
Yes.
Like as far as the trucker's concerned, he's just transporting goods, and maybe he's been asked to look the other way and been asked also not to look in the back. But we don't know. Is he a government agent? Is he in on it, or is he as oblivious to everything that's going on as he makes out? But the fact of the matter is, he does lie. You know, he says that he wasn't in the Gulf War, and he was, and he doesn't even give his correct name. We find out at one point. So, to be honest, it's one of the things that I kind of don't like about this episode, because there are many episodes of the X-Files where the truth is somewhat fluid. Where it kind of leaves you asking more questions than it provides answers. But usually, like when it's done well, when the X-Files does it well, you do have a sense that you know what's gone on, or a sense of maybe two different possibilities of what's gone on, and then it's kind of left up to you to decide which one you're going to go with. But in this, you know, I watched this 2 times in the run-up to us doing this podcast, And by the time I get to the end of it, I'm still kind of left scratching my head, thinking, I'm still not entirely sure I know what the hell has gone on here at all. And by the time Deep Throat goes off into the mist, I feel like he has done to us essentially what he's done to Mulder in this episode, which has left us with so many questions that we haven't got a clue what we're supposed to believe.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get to more of that sort of later on. But back to this scene in the sort of interview scene, it leads to one of my favourite interactions in the entire episode, and that is between the sheriff that comes in and Scully and Mulder, where the sheriff comes in and he says, "We will no longer cooperate in your investigation." And Scully just goes, "Why?" And he comes back with the best response ever: "Just go away." Which, surely there could have been countless things he could have said. And in most other episodes, I would have slated it for that, but I just thought it was generally hilarious and just added on to the general aspect of what is going on here, which I feel this episode is constantly doing with you. Every time there's another scene, you're like, what? Seriously, what is happening here? What is going on?
I also don't know. I don't know what the jurisdiction kind of conduct is as well with the FBI, because obviously they work for the federal government, which you would assume would have jurisdiction in any county they go into. So the fact that this sheriff guy just tells him to leave and he won't cooperate suggests that he does have the power to do that in some respect. But I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't expect so. So I'm left a little bit confused by that exchange, really, as to who is in the right there, and should Scully and Mulder push it further.
Technically, no crime has been committed.
Well, yeah, it's true.
So I mean, the police can't really hold the guy either. He just complained he haven't seen aliens or something like that. They just kind of pack him up and send him on his way. But then from that one great interaction onto the next one, where you actually see Mulder and Scully getting on the bus. And you're like, man, the FBI are getting real cheap here. It's hilarious. They're just sitting in the bus, and then they start to talk about the lone gunman. And then we get to introduce the lone gunman, which, I faintly remember. And you kind of like all these guys, or I do anyway.
Frohickey, Langley, and Byers. You got Frohickey, who's the kind of short pervert who looks a bit like he could do with taking a bath now and again.
She's hot.
He's really got a thing for Scully. And then you got Byers, who seems to be the most clean cut of them, always wears a suit. Very much the more pacifistic one, I think. And then you got Langley, who's just an out-and-out reject from Woodstock, I think. But yeah, three really great characters. This was supposed to be pretty much just a one-time thing for them, but because the fans just loved them so much, Carter brought them back.
And there's three very individual characters, and you can see how they could all work together as a team straight away. And one of the best comments they make is maybe the fourth member of the lone gunman, like Mulder. And they're like, "That's why we like you, Mulder. Your ideas are even wackier than ours." So we move on to Mulder studying the crime scene photos, and Scully's kind of tearing down the gunman a little bit.
Yeah, I like Mulder's, because she says that they're perhaps some of the most paranoid people I've ever met in my life, and he says, "Oh, I don't know. I think it's quite feasible that." That Frohickey could find you attractive. There's a few moments like this actually throughout the episode where the banter between Mulder and Scully is on form, and I think a lot of that is down to the fact that nearly every scene with them in in this episode has them together. I mean, we've complained in the past about several episodes where they split them up, and you kind of have Scully work in one angle and Mulder work in another, and they kind of interact through phone calls and things.
Yeah.
But this episode, I think one of its greatest strengths is the fact that it does keep Mulder and Scully together for most of its running time.
And just at the end of this scene, as Scully's talking about the gunman, she discovers a bug in her pen, which previously we didn't mention an old lady used at the bus stop. And let the paranoia reign. So Mulder immediately sets the signal for Deep Throat, and then they get the usual kind of like phone rings and hangs up, and it's time to meet. And as always, it's a clandestine meeting, and Deep Throat hands Mulder a large envelope and tells him that this leads to a dangerous path.
Yeah.
And this is the first of a lot of appearances of Deep Throat during this episode.
Yeah, there's something of an inconsistency in his character there, though, because he's so quick to jump when he sees someone taking a photograph. And then literally 2 seconds after, he shiftily pulls this whopping great big envelope out of his pocket and hands it to Mulder. And you're just kind of like, well, hang on a minute. If you're that nervous, mate, just at the click of a camera, then...
But when you think about the whole duplicitous nature of this episode, it could be totally conceivable that he's set up the camera person.
Yeah,
because,
but that's what I mean. And it's just like, it's Mulder's willingness to go along with whatever this guy says, and again, that's the thing with this episode, is that this whole time Deep Throat is playing Mulder. We just never know quite to what degree.
Yes. I didn't really get that until later on in the episode. I wasn't sure at the start. Like I said, every time there was a new scene, I was just like, where's it going? Where is this going now? Basically, in the envelope is all about that opening encounter that we see at the start with the Iraqi pilot. And Mulder's kind of telling Scully this, and Scully mentions that the trucker wasn't who he said he was, and he wasn't transporting auto parts like he said he was as well.
Once again, I might just point out Scully doing all the legwork. It's like Mulder's like off taking, dodgy, dodgy evidence from someone that, quite frankly, probably shouldn't be trusted, while Scully's off doing the real detective work and finding out about this guy.
And like you said earlier on, the trucker was Special Forces in Iraq. And Mulder is telling Scully about the Iraqi crash, and Mulder lays out his theory, but Scully doesn't even answer that. She kind of knows where the truck is going, and that kind of leads us on to the next scene.
Yeah, I love the look on Scully's face.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to get a read on it. I can't tell if she's scared of Mulder, or scared of his theory, or scared of what possible bugs there might be in the office, or...
I just took it as a choose your battles, and this isn't one of them.
Yeah.
Let them have it.
Yeah, she looks a bit kind of weirded out.
So Mulder goes home for a few things, and Deep Throat is just sitting in his room, and just as he casually does, and he's taking the breaker out so they can't put the power on, no lights, and he hands Mulder this envelope, not as thick as the one he handed him on the park bench, just a little envelope, and tells him that it went to great expense to get him this picture.
Yeah, and he pretty much all but tells him that they have the UFO. He's proper baiting him.
Oh yeah. So
the question is, obviously, what is the reason? Because Deep Throat keeps feeding Mulder all this stuff, and obviously the intention there is to feed him just enough, but then snatch away the actual evidence. So it really begs the question: why? Why give him this in the first place? They could just let it fly under the radar, because they wouldn't even be on this case if Deep Throat hadn't have given Mulder those original transcripts. And
I think the overall thesis of the episode, I think, in my opinion, once I'd seen it all, was Deep Throat is really showing his power and his reach, and he is manipulating Mulder so easily that he could do this at any time. And he says things like, I can't be seen with you. But then later on in the episode, he quite freely walks about a compound with him. And he's very obviously in charge of it. He's in his room handing him a picture that's just super secret. But then you can also look at it as he's the one that plants the bug in the socket. And he's there for two reasons. And because he also tells him that he's still being listened to later on. It's just, he's pretty much just teasing Mulder, playing him along, but still keeping him very close to him by showing him certain bits of evidence. And Mulder's so easily going along with it, even though he knows he's been used, because there is a chance that he may get tangible evidence at the end of this. But I think it's just Deep Throat just showing him how all-powerful he can be.
See, to me, it does feel like Deep Throat is keeping Mulder on hold. Like, to me, it feels like Deep Throat sees Mulder as the man for the job, but that job isn't ready to be carried out. Is what I feel. I feel like if there's gonna come a time when the truth is to be exposed, Deep Throat feels that Mulder is the man to do it. It's just that at this point in time, he doesn't want that truth exposing. So what? What do you do in the meantime? You have to keep Mulder interested. You have to keep his passion ignited. You have to keep him searching for that truth. So by showing him some of the things that he shows him in this episode, it keeps Mulder in the game, but it doesn't show him enough to be able to, take to the press or, whatever. But it does, to me, it does all feel just a little bit kind of up in the air, like, just too random and too... I don't know, it just niggles at me a bit. It just niggles at me that things aren't quite explained enough. And I know this is a trait of the X-Files, but here I'm not so sure it's handled as well as it has been in others. But we'll move on to the next scene.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so where were we?
So we're on this photo. So Deep Throat has given Mulder what Mulder believes to be a smoking gun.
And he is literally hyper.
Yeah, he's buzzing off it. Absolutely buzzing off it. So what's
He's
the first thing Scully
mode.
says? First thing Scully says, it's a fake, Mulder.
Yeah.
But it does lead to a really nice moment between them, in which Scully basically calls out exactly what we've just been discussing, which is that actually, Mulder, you're so quick to believe, so quick to jump into these situations with both feet first, that, that's something I can respect, but other people will be able to use that against you. And then
which is happening.
Yeah, which is exactly what is happening in this episode. And he just says thank you, and then turns and walks away. And when he first says it, you can't... Well, I don't know about you, but for me, when I first watched it, I couldn't quite tell if that was a thank you, but no thank you kind of thing. And he turns and walks away. Or whether it's a thank you for acknowledging that, and thank you for reining me in, I guess. And
I think because of later on actions, I think it's probably a thank you for reining me in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that's what it is. But what I mean is, like, on first watch, it has that air about it where you're not quite sure what he means by that thank you. Is it quite sarcastic or what? But absolutely.
This is a scene where Scully pretty much lays out everything that's happened in this episode. Like you said, she says about the belief, him jumping in, and she says, like... the truth is out there, but so are the lies.
Yeah.
It's like not everything you find is going to be 100% true, and that's how they get... I'm assuming they sort of characterise a lot of people as cooks because they pick up on the wrong information.
Yeah. And this goes back to, as well, if there was a little bit during the scene when they were in the office, where... Have we got past that scene yet? I don't know. Basically, when Scully tells Mulder that he's the only one she trusts.
I can't remember.
Because Mulder essentially tells her he tells her about Deep Throat in a very loose sense. He said he's got a deep connection in the government, and that's who he got the transcripts from. And she wants to know about him, and so he's like, no, he's got to remain secret, but I trust him, okay? And she says, Mulder, you're the only one I trust. And I think this episode kind of, by the end of it, I think we're going to be in a place, or Mulder's going to be in a place where actually Scully is the only one he trusts, because all the trust he has for Deep Throat by the end of it is, well, it's going to be on shaky ground, put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. So we move on to the next scene, Brian?
Yeah, go on.
Yep, so we move on to the FBI headquarters, and Scully leaves her bag on the desk and goes to get a coffee, and when she returns, her bag has moved, and before she can get into full-on paranoia mode, Mulder has had the photo analysed.
Yeah.
And shows that the moon is in the wrong place and the pictures are fake.
Yeah.
And everyone is against them, and paranoia just takes full-on hold again.
Yeah. I gotta say, I don't think we needed that scene with the bag.
It doesn't add anything, and you don't get it to come up and stuff. I thought we were going to find another bug in it later on. But that didn't happen.
It's like, if it was like a double bluff kind of thing, then that would have been fine. But it's not even a double bluff. It's just like, oh, it's Mulder. So it's just instantly, like, from the moment you go, oh, and then it's like, oh, right. And then it's over. So it feels like, get there faster.
I think it's classic misdirection, because of the pen earlier on, you're like, there's something up with that bag, and then Mulder's there and you're thinking, oh, Mulder's just missed the person and Scully's going to think it was him, and then later on we're going to find out there's something in the bags, because I know that later on I'm watching for her carrying the bag in other scenes. I'm like, oh, she's got the bag, oh, it's good. Yeah. And I think it's just this episode's archaic manner of just throwing everything up in the air and only showing you what it really wants to show you, kind of thing. It's just dazzling you all these misdirections.
Yeah, for me, I would have taken that out. I don't think we needed that.
And then you have Deep Throat and Mulder meeting yet again. They're getting a bit bored of the sort of Vancouver landscape, so they went to an aquarium to see some fishes. And Deep Throat tells him that he needed to divert him, and some things need to be kept secret. It's like a moral discussion that comes up here of the right information getting out and when it gets out, and some things need to be kept in a private manner. Yeah.
And Mulder's answer is, who are you to decide? Why do you get to decide? Which is a, it's a valid argument. Who is it who gets to decide and why?
And then it's most people you find like a duplicitous nature within their actions. But here, quite clearly, Deep Throat is telling him that he is not always going to tell him the truth.
Yeah.
Doesn't even try to hide the fact.
No.
Just comes right out and says it, you'll know what I want you to know almost.
Yeah.
When I think you should know it.
Yeah.
Again, just showing the power he's got. And then just at the end of it, just to get him wound up even more, he just says, I'm not surveilling you, but people still are.
Yeah.
And that it turns Mulder into the crazy person, just ripping his apartment to bits. And wouldn't you know it, it's in the last place he looks. Isn't that always the way?
It's kind of, I think it's a bit of a nod to, have you ever seen the Francis Ford Coppola film, The Conversation?
Yes.
I think I think there's some of that in this episode, in which they're trying to build that idea that you're always being watched, you're always being listened to, and that paranoia kind of really sets in with Mulder. So, yeah.
And then Scully comes in midway through, and you kind of see her face straight away, as if to go, he's snapped, he's proper gone. And then he kind of leads her over to the socket and shows her the bug, and then they have a fake conversation. And then we cut to a scene where Mulder and Scully are being followed, and Mulder drops Scully off at the street, and he drives away, and a person gets out of a car, and the car follows Mulder, and the person follows Scully. But she evades him rather easily by just jumping into a taxi.
Yeah. So they both lose their tails.
Yep. And then it shows you Scully at the airport. She buys a ticket to Chicago on a credit card, and then she buys another ticket with cash to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And Mulder and Scully meet in Las Vegas. They have this really weird kind of conversation, like in a souvenir shop, looking at kind of postcards, but as if they're not, as if they're not talking to each other, but they quite clearly are.
They clearly are. Yeah. There's again some good banter between them. Like I like Mulder's talking about being on the phone with this Chinese guy when he's been trying to find this truck, and he's pretty sure the guy told him in his native tongue to shove some sushi where the sun don't shine. But
it's a mouthful.
Yeah, but also, again, you know, who is the one who's done the detective work? Who's the one who's found the truck? Scully. Scully is the one who's found the truck.
But you get that in that conversation. Like Mulder's like, I've tried everything, I can't find it. Have you had any luck? And she's just like, yeah, I know where he's going. You're like, Mulder, did you really try everything, or did you just rely on Scully finding
pretty
this
much. He knew that she'd find it, so he was just like, yeah, I'm going to take some time off on this one.
So Mulder and Scully find out where the truck is, and they follow it. And this, I noticed, the first thing I noticed in this scene was the music was tremendous. It was like a really piano kind of suspicious spy set type of music that it just was really good and fit the scene. And then, you know, that they're following the truck, the radio starts to have interference, there's a bright light appears, and then they slam on the brakes, and the truck's kind of jackknifed in front of them.
Well, it's facing in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
It's not jackknifed, because obviously if you jackknife, your trailer goes right through your cabin. But it's basically like it's been almost like it's been abducted and then brought back and put down in the opposite direction, so to speak. But obviously, it ain't the same truck, as we learn.
So the driver's gone. The back door's open. They walk around it, put their guns. They climb inside, dig through the boxes to find what looks like a medical unit where something has been stored, and it's almost like those alien autopsy videos that came out in the sort of mid-90s, early 90s. It's like that kind of aesthetic about it.
Which basically came out, I might add, on the back of the X-Files, on the back of the success of the X-Files. Yeah, everyone was suddenly into aliens and stuff back then, and then Fox was the ones who got their hands on it. What a crock that was. But.
So Mulder says it looks as if it's been a rescue mission, and then it kind of jumps a little beat, and he's testing the scene for the usual UFO sort of specifications of an what's what I'm looking for. Encounter has happened. He's got the gun out that reads whatever it reads. He's got the stopwatches out. And he's the one that turns around and says it's a hoax.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't expecting.
No, and because in that scene as well, Scully's like, ooh, Mulder, I feel all, and it's just like she's really getting into it. She's proper like down with the whole UFO thing at this point. And then he's the one who turns around and goes, no, it's a hoax, it's BS. So she's like, oh, all right. So it's just like, Mulder, you should have milked this for everything it was worth. You had her.
But then Mulder actually turns around and says that he wanted so badly to believe that they're actually using his want to believe against him.
Yeah.
The Scully effect of rationale is kind of seeped into him. It's the good aspects of Scully are rubbing off on Mulder at this point.
But it's almost like they need Mulder in the limelight to keep banging on about conspiracy theories. So show him enough, but not too much, and then he'll go away from this ranting about aliens and UFOs and government conspiracies, and it'll keep people thinking, one, he's a lunatic, but also that anyone else who talks about this stuff is also a lunatic. So that's kind of the reason I feel that they're doing this. And I'll admit that I'm drawing a lot into that because I've seen the whole series. I know where the series goes, and that is an element that comes back up in a really big way. So I don't know if I'm just reading too much in there. So yeah, but there you go.
So then we got into Mulder, who's contacting, is it some kind of UFO analysation subgroup or whatever, who sort of gather all the information of UFO sightings, and they actually use this to track where the real truck is and where it's going.
Yeah, basically. So it's one of the UFO groups, of which there are quite a few.
So they have an area of where the truck is, and they go looking in that area when they stumble across a UFO party.
Oh man, it's like a convention for people who need some help, I guess. But
And it's just one of these lucky things where they're like, what happens here? They're talking, they're like, oh, aliens come, they're always just above that building down there. You know? Just as the trucker is leaving.
Building down on that hill there.
And they obviously check through the binoculars and they see the trucker leaving the place. And they're like, this is the building, this is the one where we need to get into. So they contact the lone gunman as they do. And a nice scene where they're like, hey, turn off the tape. And he's like, I've turned it off. And he's like, turn off the tape. And the guy's like, yeah, I totally have. And they get them forged papers. They hack the system and get them some details.
Yeah.
So they can get access to this super secret government facility.
Yeah. It's lone gunmen are kind of... I mean, I imagine they probably had characters like this beforehand, but nowadays when you watch these shows, all these sci-fi shows and fantasy shows, even cop shows, you know, there's always that one character who's like the computer nerd, the one who can, you know, if you've found a Smallville, the Chloe character who...
Yeah.
Basically, they're kind of like a get-out-of-jail-free card. They come up with the computer jargon and whatever, and they can break into any facility, any computer... So they're basically a MacGuffin to help the main characters do what they need to do. But this is the first time I remember, you know, as a 13-year-old boy when I first watched this, it was the first time I remember a group of characters like this. But now characters like that are everywhere.
Yeah. This is where it pretty much began. You know, like we said, the X-Files had such an impact on lots of TV shows and movies to come. It's just another way that they set the benchmark.
Yeah.
So they're in the facility and they know that they need to get to level 6. So they walk past this room that has a big level 6 mark on it and a soldier standing in front of it. They continue to walk and then they duck in a corner and they're like, we need to get in there. How are we going to do it? Let's go and just try something. And as soon as they turn back round, the soldier's there. Again, it's circumventing your typical assumptions because you would assume that they're going to go back, distract the guard and get in there, but no, this seems to be the one guard that's doing his job properly and is like, these people don't belong here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go and get them.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you believe it, Mulder just runs away.
Though I will say before that, the scene before that when they get their fake badges and they go in, they just couldn't resist, could they? They couldn't resist using that old trope of when they're halfway through the gate and the guard shouts back, you know, hey you! And then goes up to him and goes, wear these at all times. And you're like, oh man, really? You had to go there. Okay.
Yeah, so it gives you that guy who's kind of incompetent and lets him through, and then it gives you the other guard who's fully on point and stops him.
Yeah.
Even though Mulder just kind of runs away from him.
It is funny seeing Mulder leg it. He's just like, sod it, I'm going, you know, I don't care the fact this guy's got a gun. I'm going. He needs to see so desperately that he just doesn't care.
And he makes it down to the level 6 to this large open space.
No. Hang on. Before you get there, I've just got to point out Scully grassing them up.
Oh yeah,
it's like a really funny moment. It's Scully through and
she
through.
Buckles.
Yeah, she
buckles
mega
so quick.
buckles. It's just like no, come on, Mulder. It's all right. Let's just tell him. It's like two kids who've been caught trying to break into the headmaster's office or something. It's like no. It's just Mulder. Let's just tell him. And she flashes her FBI badge. It's like we're FBI. We're here on an investigation. It's like Scully. Come on, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good moment, and I really like that one as well. Mulder runs away, trips over a few times, gets down to this large open space with really good, weird set design things, and it has this metal container in the middle of it with a window. And just as he's about to get to it to see what it's in, he's surrounded by guards, armed guards. And then, wouldn't you believe it, Deep Throat appears to be the man in charge of this, and goes up and starts talking to Mulder, and the whole time I'm just sitting there going, you better look through that window. You need to look through. I need to see what's in there. Get over there and look. And Deep Throat tells him this story, which could be true, could be false, about his past with alien encounters.
Yeah. He says that he is one of only 3 men with the distinction of having to exterminate an EBE,
one of these things,
extraterrestrial biological entity. And basically, after the Roswell incident, and this was the first time I'd ever heard of Roswell, I think, unless it was mentioned in the pilot, which it may just have well been, but or maybe Fallen Angel. If it's going to be mentioned in any episode, it'd be mentioning one of them, or Deep Throat. But yeah, like this was a moment when Roswell kind of just really got hammered home, and I'd never heard of Roswell until this point. But after the X-Files, every conspiracy nut traced everything back to Roswell. Roswell was the big, to the point that a few years later they even made a TV series called Roswell, which was a load of crap. But it's just, Roswell, people kind of know about it, I think, predominantly through the X-Files. And it kind of started here, in which we don't just get a mention, but we get a link with one of our main characters. Deep Throat himself is linked to Roswell, in the sense that because of Roswell, his organisation was pretty much put together, and many organisations around the world in other countries, just like the one he works for, in which they had to make an agreement between them that should one of these aliens land on their soil, they would be responsible for exterminating it. As he says, he's one of 3 men to have done that. But like you say, can we believe him? Can we trust what he's saying is true?
Absolutely. So eventually, he lets Mulder look inside the box, and it is empty.
It's really unsatisfying.
It really is, but it couldn't be anything else other than that.
But the question is, have they just exterminated another alien?
Right.
That's what something has been in that box. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've done something with it.
Has there?
Well, this is it. Has there? There might not have been, but I guess I don't think it helps us seeing inside that box. As a viewer, I think it would have been better to have not had Mulder look in that box. Leave a guard stood at that window with a gun. Deep Throat walks Mulder away, has his little chin wag, and Mulder has to go. But to just show us that empty box, I don't know, it's a bit anticlimactic, I guess. I think there would have been more tension in it if we had not seen inside. But it is a bit flat. It's a bit disappointing when we just see that there's nothing there. But
and that's but during that scene, like as well, Deep Throat explains to Mulder how exactly he's using him. Again, he's like, and he says to him the best way to hide a lie is in amongst truths. So you're never quite sure what's going on. But he actually just says to him that he is using him.
Yeah.
And then you have Deep Throat escorting Mulder from the building.
I love that final reaction from Deep Throat when he says to Mulder, "You're awfully quiet, Mr. Mulder," and Mulder just says, "I'm wondering which lie to believe." And then the look on Deep Throat's face is just like, it's almost, you could read it so many ways, but it's almost like you're never gonna know, mate. See ya.
Yeah. And then Scully comes out just as Deep Throat walks into the smoke, the mist,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the final image of this episode, and a very fitting one. So, Brian, why don't you wrap this up and give us your score and tell us what you thought of this episode all?
Well, I'd say it is an important episode, I think, within the mythology of the X-Files. You know, it's the first time we get a proper link between, like, with regards to who Deep Throat really is, I guess, even though we still don't truly know. But we get a sense of the organisation he works for and where they came from with the whole Roswell thing. We get the lone gunmen introduced to us, and even though it's only one, well, couple of scenes, it's very short. It's still very rewarding. But yeah, and all the stuff with Mulder and Scully, the banter, because they do spend so much time in the episode together. Yeah, I love that. But I just feel like the episode is so muddled. It's so flip-floppy, you know? It goes from truth, lies, truth, lies, truth, lies, and then you get to the end of it and you kind of try and play it back in your mind, but you kind of get lost in amongst all the to-in and fro-in, and you're just kind of left thinking, I actually don't know what I'm supposed to take away from that episode in the end, other than the fact that Deep Throat is clearly a powerful man who deals in truth and lies as and when it suits him. But I mean, we do get stuff with Mulder and Scully as well, with regards to how Mulder doggedly pursues things, the trust level between the two of them, and just, Scully bringing Mulder back on track to the point that Mulder goes off and checks that photograph. So, yeah, it's a difficult episode. It is. It's a difficult one to get your head around. It's quite intriguing. There's a lot of intrigue throughout it. But I think I'm going to go a 3.5.
Right.
Just because it does muddy the waters so much that I can't quite bring myself to say it's a very good episode. But it's not simply a good episode. It's somewhere in between. So yeah, a 3.5 from me.
Right. I think there's some very good things that this episode does. Like you said, it introduces the lone gunman, 3 characters who are instantly really iconic. You get a lot more of Deep Throat in this, who is one of the best elements and always kind of piques my interest whenever that guy appears. You get very much a Mulder and Scully centric episode, which really forms a strong bond between these two as they come to realise that they're there for each other, and as though nobody else may be there, these are the two that can rely on each other, and they have some great interplay, and you actually see them growing. Mulder grows from this constant belief into just taking a step back now and again and evaluating the actual evidence, because Scully rubs off a little bit. And, as you said earlier on, Scully gets excited by the thought of maybe discovering aliens, so a little bit of Mulder has rubbed off on her.
Yeah.
I really like the fact that it's so duplicitous in nature. Nothing is what it seems. I had no idea where this episode was going. Whereas normal episodes, you can look at it and you can see how it's going to lay out its plan and how the steps it's going to follow. I had no idea where this was going to go. It kept me on my toes. When I expected something, it took a left turn. And I found this to be one of the most enjoyable episodes of the X-Files I've seen yet. I absolutely loved it, everything about it, and that's why I gave it 5 out of 5.
Wow. Okay.
I really like this one.
I don't think you're in the minority in that regard. I do think this is definitely a much loved episode. I just feel like the government conspiracy stuff is done better elsewhere. I know that because I've seen the whole series. Coming back now and watching it now with hindsight, I'm not quite as big on it as, say, maybe I once was. I guess a lot of the questions I walked away with at one time would have been far more intriguing to me than they are now.
But what it does is it really freshens up the character of Deep Throat. Whereas in the previous episodes, he turns up, he passes over some information, it leads Mulder on a say quest. Now you're like, when he turns up, is he doing something for himself?
Yeah.
Is he sending Mulder on a goose chase? Is it going to be something that aids Mulder? You're never going to quite know, and you're always going to have that thought in your mind going, like, what's really going on here?
Yeah.
And it adds a new level to any future, say, interactions that these guys are going to have, for me anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All in all, like I said, I was looking forward to talk about this one because I really enjoyed it. So Brian, the next episode that we're going to be talking about, next episode obviously is going to be Miracle Man. Is this one that's renowned amongst the fans? Is this a well-known episode?
No. I'm not looking forward to this one, to be honest.
Right?
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's the worst episode, but maybe when we get into discussing it, you might bring things up that maybe even I'm not seeing, and either improve it or drag it down even further. But yeah, we'll see.
Something to not look forward to then?
Maybe.
But hey, even if the episode's not great, I'm sure the conversation will be riveting. So we'll see you guys next episode for Miracle Man.